The first session will be offered by an evangelist at Microsoft. He'll be telling us about how everybody needs a bit of science in their data. Everyone, please welcome Andrew Fryer.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully all loaded up on coffee and pastry, like me. Let's get started. I always like to start with some definitions. You may not have seen this. It's called Bing. But if I was going to do some science, I would skin this to make it look like another search engine. And if you can't tell the difference, is it doing a good job? Now, every search engine needs a couple of things. First of all, it needs a fair amount of data so it can come up with the right answers. And it needs people to use it so it can learn from experience. Yeah? Think about it, the more often you use something, like your arm muscle, the bigger it gets. Hopefully you're all using your brains today, and it's not going to atrophy when you get to my old age. And you'll still be like really, really sharp because we're using our muscles of brain. So we had a problem back in the day. And one of the things we didn't do is we didn't rebrand or relaunch this Bing operating system, but it wasn't always as effective as it is today because it's hard to hire data scientists. Is anybody looking for a data scientist to recruit into their organization? You've all got enough, have you? Wow. You're the first group that I have that met that. I mean, if you look at the job boards, it's alive with that stuff. Harvard Business Review called data science the sexiest job in IT, probably, and they're probably right, okay? And then the problem we've got is we've got a lot of data scientists. We've got hundreds of data scientists. To give you some idea, we have 100 data scientists in our HR department, right? Looking at retaining talent because it's hard enough to go and compete with everybody else to get the best and brightest minds, even though we've got amazing coffee and great parties at Microsoft. But hanging on to them is just as important when they maybe go and take a career break or maybe go and have children or they're ill or what have you. So we really obsess about that. And then obviously the other problem we've got is we've got to get the data in. I hope we're all familiar with the 4 V's of big data. Everybody nods. Yep, nobody. We got anybody new to big data who's just turned up for the first time here? Okay, well, let's just quickly do that then. Actually, I could probably call some people out. So what's the first V, Lucas?
Velocity.
Velocity, yes, that's a problem. The internet is changing faster than your fiber optic cable can cope with. So even if you could store it all, it's changing faster than you can keep up with. And it also means if you want to reason over it, it's changing faster than you can come up with the ideas. And then obviously volume we've already talked about. Anyone want to give me another one? This is great because I don't have to remember them then. Variety, yeah, we're looking at, everybody's got their selfie stick out and we're taking pictures of each other. And then we've got documents and text. We've probably all stored CVs for those data scientists we're trying to hire. And then we've got job descriptions over here. How do we match one to the other? If a recruitment company sorted that out, amazing. Probably might be good for online dating, but we won't talk about that too much in this forum. But it's the same kind of problem, matching skills and understanding the human condition through photographs, through images, through text. And that's really what we're about with big data. We're trying to understand most of the time what humans are doing. There's an abstraction there because we sometimes put a device on our wrist. This is an old-fashioned windy-up watch, but some of you have probably got a Fitbit. And we can understand the human condition through that. And even if you've got a robot making a car, someone's servicing it, someone's fixing it, and so on and so forth, and then someone's going to go and drive it. And we're, by association, understanding what humans are doing in a more reliable way in many ways, because we can look at your driving habits. 70 miles an hour? This car won't do 70 miles an hour, sir. You know, so we have got this science now where an insurance company can look at the performance of the car, make sure you were compliant, you were driving safely, etc., and you can get a lower premium. So we've got all these different kinds of data. So it's quite difficult to do. So how do you do this stuff? Well, if you've got a load of people, imagine, well, we're all data scientists. We've got some data scientists in there, actual data scientists here, who put it on their CV. So you've all got enough, but it's not you. They're all doing the data science, are they? Yeah, okay, right, you left them back at the office. Right, fine. And maybe perhaps some of you are aspiring to move into that field from the business, the world you're in. Maybe engineers who want to get closer to the tech with IoT and so on and so forth. Well, if you've got a big team, whatever you're doing, building a road, designing a theatre production, making a film, trying to decide about government policy, it's super hard to get people to work together, isn't it? And share their knowledge, because you find that guy over there's already done it, and you haven't done it. So we needed a way to get our data scientists to share their expertise. So if you crack the problem of how to understand Twitter, and you've written a little bit of code to map Twitter in the way that we want it done, why rewrite that again? You need to put that somewhere, don't you? Yeah? So those are the kinds of things we had to obsess about. And we wanted to make sure our data scientists, for this limited resource, only did what they should be doing, which is data science. So we'll have other people who are going to go and load the data up and work about the engineering, spin the infrastructure up, and so on and so forth. And then we're going to automate the hell out of that because we're not quite sure how much infrastructure we need or when, because sometimes there are moments in time when the internet goes crazy, right? Like in America, it might be the Super Bowl. Here it might be X Factor, or and occasionally a general election. So what we needed to be able to do was to measure people, just as we measure our systems, we measure our data scientists on their performance. How much are they doing? How many experiments are they writing? What insights are they coming up with? So we turn that back on itself, which sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? But they want to do data science, so when they realise they're being measured like that, they'll do data science, and everything they're not supposed to be doing, hopefully they'll pass to other people. And so we have kind of like a surgical team, where you've got the anaesthetist and the nurses around the surgeon who is the data scientist, and these other guys are, like me actually, are data engineers. We're going to do the feature engineering, we're going to strip the data in, we're going to do that stuff. And then there's another bunch of guys who are going to go and get crazy with containers and infrastructure and make sure it's all working properly. And that is how we try and then make all this work. And then finally what we do, and I was having a conversation, I had some lovely conversations with a couple of people over coffee this morning, saying how easy our tools are to use. And thank you for that. We do obsess about that, because the point of it is we want everybody to be able to do data science, rather than just the few. Because everybody can have a good idea. And Satya, the guy that runs Microsoft, has just written a book, Hit Refresh. And we are all about that. Everybody can have a good idea. That democratization is really, really important for us. And that is why internally, and I can't show you this because I'm not allowed to, we have AI school inside Microsoft. So everybody goes and does AI school, right? Now, how many people in here are HR specialists? Have we got any lawyers in the house? There's AI school for lawyers. There's AI school for the marketing department. AI school for HR. Everybody under Harry Shum, who runs the AI part of the business for Satya Nadella, is having to learn this stuff. Because if we are going to be an intelligence company, everybody's input matters. It's no good looking at some random graph plot and realizing that cheese consumption inside Microsoft is directly related to the number of our employees that are dying by being tangled up in their bed sheets. That's just 2 points, that's just 2 lines that more or less look like each other. We need somebody in the business to say, well, that actually kind of makes sense because you're having nightmares and you shouldn't have had cheese before you went to bed, and that's why you're having trouble with your linen. So we need to put some science into our thinking. We need to bring the business along as well. And the other thing is we need to reduce fear of making mistakes. Now, if you make the same mistake every day, like turning up for work late, that's a problem. But of course there are railway strikes and what have you. So we encourage people to make mistakes. In fact, I would say if you haven't made a mistake today, you haven't done any work. You haven't thought about anything. Now, we can actually go back to maths in 1937, I think it was, and Alan Turing actually has a mathematical formula that posits the fact that artificial intelligence is never going to be perfect. It is always going to make mistakes because it's learning. So if we're going to learn, we have to make mistakes. Fair enough? So you need to encourage that culture inside your organization and obviously try and do some damage limitation, and I'll get to some of that in a minute. So what we had to do as well is we had to do a bit of engineering. We built something. It was called Cosmos. And it's not something internally that powers MSN and Bing and what have you. And then we wrote a programming language called Scope that sits on top of that to enable us to do kind of like MapReduce functions. But we didn't want to build clusters. We wanted our data scientists to be able to run a query and specify parallelism when they ran the query, rather than know there's a 500 node cluster out there. And then we want to give them insight back in how well it had parallelized. Because if it's election night and I've got you all counting votes, I'm going to go and get a bucket of votes and I'm going to go and stick it on that table, that table, that table, that table, and you're going to count up your votes, and then we might have a central row of tables here where we count the counts on either row going backwards, and eventually Lucas comes up here and says, here are the votes. Now, he's a single process, so at the end of it, we can't always use all the cores. So what we did was we wanted to show people how well their code was using the parallelism that they specified in their queries, and then they could run it better next time. All sound reasonable? So that's what we built. And this is fine. This is a long, long time ago, 2003, 2004. And then Satya came along and said, we're a cloud-first company, before he said we're an AI company. And that's kind of my point on my next slide. So we're a cloud-first company. And now what we're going to do is we need to move everything that we do to the cloud, which sounds kind of odd when you work for Microsoft. But let me give you an example. We used to have our own servers, Exchange servers, for running email inside Microsoft. And then we offered out Office 365 so that all you could do it. But then we moved ourselves to Office 365. So in Office 365, we just look like another company. Does that make sense? And that's what I mean being a cloud. We're a tenant of Office 365, just the same as a big organisation like Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs are, or whoever it is that's rolling out this week, or the NHS. Okay? By the same association, we then took this Cosmos and Scope thing, picked it up, and threw it at Azure. Now, we've done that now, and then some bright spark in marketing thought, you know what, we could sell this? And so we launched Data Lake. And the point here is, you're using what we use. We don't have some extra secret sauce. You're using what we use. If I show you a graphical tool, how we do our dashboards, and for those 100 analysts in HR, it's going to use something called Power BI, because that's what we run our business on. So we run our business on the stuff that we sell to you. That sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? Or does it? Sounds a bit authentic to me. I think it's quite a good idea. And of course, then what's going to mess with your head is that it's not just our stuff that we use. It's other people's stuff. We're big fans of the Penguin. We're platinum sponsors of the Linux Consortium. And one of the revolutions that we've seen is things like containers and so on. So we absolutely embrace all of that. But sometimes if you're a data scientist, we want to insulate you from that. So you're going to create containers without knowing that you did. And you're just going to do your work. And you're going to spin up Spark clusters and what have you inside little containers. And if this was a more technical audience and they give me another 10 minutes, I could show you that running on this laptop because it is here right now. I've actually got a Linux virtual machine running, sitting inside my Windows 10 environment. And I've got a GPU on here, so I can actually even use things like TensorFlow or our own CNTK against that stuff to do that computation. So we've really embraced open source, which is strange, but just get over it, okay? And to my point here is the key languages. I'm not going to start the debate here because it's not my fight, but we've invested heavily in both Python and R. But whichever one of those you're learning, carry on with that. It's a cultural thing. I wouldn't come in from my organisation and say to a big bank, yeah, you've got to use Python, if they're already using R. We make R work. We bought a company called Revolution so that we could get around some of the traditional limitations of R. The fact that it's in-memory, one machine kind of environment. Well, we can't reason against big data with that. So we need things like Spark R, where we can take our algorithms to a cluster of data, overcome the memory limitations, use disk intelligence, especially if on Spark it's SSD, and then we can aggregate those results back. And then Lucas can come up and not only tell me, you know, the actual election result, we can also sort of give me some predictions and other stuff as well. You're working really hard now. Sorry. He's the, is it the head node in Hadoop? I think it is, isn't it? Yeah. He's the head node, yeah. So this is all really, really useful stuff. But then, what about the downsides? And everybody's watched a science fiction film where AI and stuff ends badly, haven't they? I'm not going to ask you to name a few, but we know who the culprits are. It rarely ends well, does it? And so lots of pundits, from Elon Musk to Professor Hawking, are saying that it's going to take over the planet. Now, I don't think we're there yet. I think we have got some incredible algorithms that can do amazing things. We can, I could turn on translation at the moment. I was thinking about presenting this in Klingon to you this morning. Any Klingon speakers in the house? Or to pick a language, I've just been chatting to my guys here from Poland. We could spin up Polish and you get Polish subtitles just like you do at the cinema. Because we can do real-time translation. We're good at that. We can understand, even my voice at the speed I'm speaking, they can pick my voice out pretty well. I was using Spanish at an event I was earlier in the week and Urdu the day before that, which is quite an interesting way of connecting with different people. We can do that on Skype as well. So when my manager does a Skype call, we're able to have a European team on the call and they get a fair idea of what he's going on about without too much effort. It may not be, like European Union, kind of European Parliament grade, UN kind of grade translation, because wars might start if we got it wrong. But it's good enough to run a business meeting on. And I think that's really important that we can connect people in that way. We're also pretty good at playing games, Go, chess, and what have you. But I can't go and take the Go computer and say, look, here's Othello, here's Connect 4 or whatever other kind of counter game you know. Go and figure with that. It's not just going to suddenly learn that stuff. It's not got an innate ability to do general purpose AI. We are getting there, and neural networks are getting there, but we're not there yet. So what I'm really looking at is the opportunities and the benefits in the medium to short term. I just think we need to be mindful about where we are going with this stuff and not blunder into it as well. And I'll come back to that theme later on. So, artificial intelligence, that kind of world, very good at repetitive tasks. If you run an algorithm, it's going to give you the same answer at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the morning. And this for me is genius because although we always have bias in experiments, we have the same kind of bias every time we do it. So if we set up an application to approve loans, we're going to approve that loan or that mortgage on the numbers that we supply to the algorithm, not on our prejudice, which I think is important. And it gives us a consistent answer. So obviously then we can do some pretty good number crunching and pattern recognition, like recognizing somebody in a crowd. A good example, I've got a graduate who's just joined our team. We went to this bank gig on Sheffield on Thursday. She went home because she lives up in New Yorkshire. I just said, yeah, work from home on Friday. She's going, really? Yeah, go and see your parents. So she checks into, walking down the road to a restaurant where she knew her parents were going to be. Her mum's going, is that my daughter? Second thought, it is my daughter, because she wasn't expecting it. Third thought, has she been fired? So even we can get fooled sometimes. We're not absolutely sure. And we can do face recognition really well. And not only that, we can pull emotions out of that. So you've probably got a camera now that's starting to not only know that you're you've got a face in the photograph, but it can see you're smiling. Now would be a good time to press the button, and eventually it'll press the button for you. And we'll just end up with loads of cheesy photographs on whatever WhatsApp or whatever it is that you're using at the moment, instead of people looking grumpy and surprised and what have you. But what are they not good at? They're not good at experience. They're not good at creativity. You can get an AI to paint a painting like Mozart, compose a symphony. Painting like Mozart? No, I'll start that again. You can get a painting like Van Gogh. Who knows? Maybe Mozart did paint. Or compose a symphony like Beethoven. But we had to have a Van Gogh and a Beethoven for them to learn from. That's kind of my point. We can kind of copy what we've done. And I think humour might be an interesting example of where computers aren't there yet. Although you could argue, I haven't really got a sense of humour either. And the final thing I want to touch on is that world of ethics. Now, I'm not here to teach you about ethics. I am actually an engineer at Microsoft, but I tell you, we do obsess about the damn thing. And although we're all worried about, everybody's got GDPR sorted, which is why we've taken the day out to come and listen to me, isn't it? Yeah? That's all done? We're all good? Excellent. For those that aren't, we're running a big event ourselves, actually, in November, where we're running some sessions on GDPR. But I'm not here to drag you away from this conference. But what I am here to tell you is that even if you are compliant with GDPR, there's probably things that you could do with your data that aren't exactly ethical. And by that I mean, if that was found out on the front page of the Mail on Sunday, one of our English papers, or the New York Tribune, or whatever it's called, or I'm not sure what they have out in various countries that you've all come from, would you be happy with your company being reported that, you know, Microsoft are using customer data to do this, this, and this, Xbox data to do that, that, and that? Would you be comfortable with that? Would you be comfortable if we are doing something with customer data, or patient data, or employee data? How would you feel about your family members and friends being subjected to the same algorithms? You know, we could come up with a wizard IoT thing. You're walking down the road, and this young lady, Iona here, she's just popped up on her phone that Michael Kors handbags are now 50% off, and there's a red one which we know you like, and you're going, that's just a bit strange as you walk past the Michael Kors shop in some airport somewhere. It's a bit creepy, isn't it? So should we do that? Probably not illegal to do that, because you might have opted into the Michael Kors loyalty program or something like that. I'm not a Michael Kors salesman, by the way. I work for Microsoft, not Michael Kors. So, but I'm in touch with my family inside. So those kind of weird ideas. Think about and obsess about having data. We have had some trouble with this ourselves. I see a few people smiling in the room. You've heard of Tay. I want you to imagine for a minute that you're in downtown, say, Barcelona. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's all kicking off down there. People are coming out their nightclubs. And you've just let your 8-year-old daughter, has got out of the house somehow, and she's wandering down the Ramblas, or she's wandering around the centre of London or Paris or Tokyo, wherever, watching all these people come out their nightclubs. She's going to learn some new vocabulary. Yeah? She's going to learn some new terminology. And then when she comes home, she's going to replay that back to you. Has she done anything wrong? She's just learned from what you're doing. And that was kind of our learning, yeah? Now, you could argue that we could have put some filtering around that, much as you might train your own children to do the same thing. Because if we think about training in AI, it's a bit like training a child to learn. and learn ethics as well, because children don't have ethics when they first arrive. They're just screaming their heads off in the maternity ward going, I want food, I want drink, and I want it now. Later on in life, we wait until there's a break. You're not all rushing out there getting more coffee, and you're not just you're being respectful and polite and listening to what I'm saying. We learn that behaviour from our peers and friends and family. So we need to learn ethics. But we didn't put any ethics into her. We didn't put any ethics into her sister either. Who knew Tay had a sister? She's called Xiaois, if I'm pronouncing that right. Is there anybody from China in the house? Any Chinese people here? No? Okay. She reads weather on Chinese state television. I could play the video, but if you can't speak Chinese, it's not going to be that much fun. And she has 24 million followers on WeChat, which is the social media platform of choice in China. And there's been no trouble. She's been out there for a good year or so. And so that teaches you all you need to know about ethics. Same algorithm, different culture, it kind of worked differently. And I'm not here to judge either one of those, but that's just the data I'm playing back to you. So, with a couple of minutes to go, I just wanted to give you what we learned at Microsoft so that you can learn it as well. I sometimes feel that other tech companies, we've made some mistakes in the past, and I think now we're working for Satya, we are honest about the mistakes we've made and where we got it wrong. But it's interesting to watch other companies following exactly the same path and making the same mistakes. And if we are going to learn, we should learn from other people's mistakes, as our algorithms are learning from the data that they're seeing. So scribble that down. The guys have got the deck, and I hope that final comment there, which is not from Microsoft but from Peter Drucker, is that you can have all the shiny tools, but it's the people that matter. Okay? And with a couple of minutes to go, does anybody have any questions? And was that useful? And silence? You're all right? Am I doing okay for time? I'm about okay for time. So hopefully you're going to go and do some of that stuff? A few nods, yeah? I wanted to get you thinking. As you go through all these other sessions and see it's amazing technology today, think about how you're going to use it to make a difference. We're all about doing good stuff. I mainly prioritise my time working in healthcare and for charities, for startups doing unusual things. I hope you do the same, and that's a great way of learning in your spare time. Lavinia, you're going to come up and, Ina, sorry, you're going to come up and get some other people? And you could follow me if you wanted to. By the way, that's me. Shameless plug. I'm called Deep Fat because I'm Andrew Fryer. Hopefully you can figure that out. Not everybody does. And thank you for your kind attention.